So for those that don't know me, I will do a very quick little introduction. For me, I am Nic, so I'm a life and wellness coach. I also run corporate well-being programs. I do education and speaking on all things wellness. I specialize in confidence, reducing stress and anxiety, resilience, and sometimes a lot of behavior change and habit work as well. And I'm also studying at the minute for a master's in psychology, neuroscience, and mental health. So you might see a little sprinkling of all of this kind of knowledge coming together. So hopefully you find it useful. So I wanted to just do a little summary on what we're going to cover. We will work through these kind of main areas, and then again, we'll hopefully have time for questions at the end. So we are going to build on your understanding of confidence, go a little bit deeper than we did last week. We're going to look at strategies to help release the fear of failure, because I know that's something that comes up again and again. So I thought let's spend a little bit of time on that one in particular. And thirdly, maybe most importantly, we're going to look at practical tools to help you build your confidence. A lot of us know that, it's a core fundamental foundation of our business and our worlds in general. But how do you practically put these things, interweaving them with your life and everything that you've got going on to help build your confidence? So we're going to talk about that as well. So I wanted to do a quick little recap. So for those of you who weren't with us last week, just very quick so that you know what to expect in the video. I ran over basically a quick idea or refresh or a fresh take on what I think confidence really looks like. Confidence is very multi-dimensional, so it shows itself in lots of different ways. So what I had kind of summarized this as is the ability to trust yourself and your decision making. Also acknowledging your experiences up to now, remembering again from a psychological behavioral perspective that your actions and behaviors are the sum of everything that you've experienced in your life up until this point. And I think once you acknowledge that, there's a little level of confidence that you can say, I know why I tend to act that way, to default this way, but I understand that and I'm okay with that. There's a level of confidence that comes from that. Third one is taking action before you want to. We touched on this because I was explaining that there's a part of your brain basically that lights up when you take action before you want to. So the reward centers in your brain kind of light up and you get a bit of a dopamine hit from that. Fourth one is how you treat yourself and how you speak to yourself. That's really, really important. The way that you speak to yourself, the tone, the language. It's worth having a little monitor, I guess, of how you speak to yourself on a day-to-day basis. Next one was consistency, turning up for yourself again and again, despite all the curveballs that come your way, because there will absolutely be curveballs and challenges, but just turning up for yourself again and again is a fundamental aspect of confidence. And lastly, challenging yourself and changing your story. So it could be that, you've tried a couple of things and it didn't work out, but, challenge yourself to morph that idea into something different, to change, to scrap it, to come up with something new, whatever that is, challenging yourself and being brave enough to take that step. Secondly, last week we talked about, is confidence holding you back? It can be difficult to know sometimes if it is holding you back. It's likely that you might suspect it. You might have a gut feeling that you're holding yourself back. But what I kind of want you to recognize is this is an attempt to keep yourself safe, to keep you in your comfort zone. So have a little think if any of these symptoms are showing up for you. It might be something to dive a little bit deeper into. So things like overthinking, procrastination, and psychological avoidance, which is basically when something happens, you say, oh, I'll deal with that later, and you put it in this little box. Third one is self-doubt. Imposter syndrome is the fourth, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Seeking validation from external people, friends, family, and giving that too much weight. And lastly, of course, fear of failure. So I would encourage you to write down any from this list that you think may be impacting you and your actions. There might be other signs there too. So just have a little few seconds and just say, which ones are showing up for me? Now, also, I want you to remember this is normal human behavior. It's not that you're not brave enough. It's not that you can't do it. It's just that you might not be aware of everything that's going on internally and subconsciously. So, just a little few seconds to think about taking a little pause. What's coming up for you? Because when you write something down, it becomes real. You're kind of bringing it into the world. And sometimes just that small action can invite a little bit of a drive for change. So let me dive into part 2. So what I want you all to be really clear on is your confidence is a fundamental pillar of your business. It's not a little kind of happy addition that sits on the side. It's a fundamental pillar. Without your confidence, your business, your idea, your side hustle, your growth plan may not be possible. So it's like missing a leg from a stool, for example. You need it, amongst other core aspects, of course, but you need it to keep you stable. So don't ever underestimate its importance. It has the power to propel you forward, to make you really move in ways that maybe you haven't even imagined yet. So I want you to get really clear on what you need to know about building confidence as a kind of first stage. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper. So the first thing is it's not linear. So confidence will shift and move, and your feeling of confidence will rise and fall over weeks and months. It's a little bit like a snake pattern. You have to be able to go with the flow. It's normal to have doubts, to feel fear occasionally. You might be feeling really confident for a few weeks or months, and then suddenly this takes a little bit of a nosedive. That's all perfectly normal. Know that you can have all of these kind of, waves and different symptoms and still be confident. So it's a moving element. So manage your own expectations of what your confidence looks like. So, if I was to ask you all, what does confidence look like to you? You would all describe it differently, but you'll have an essence of what that means to you. So I want you just to think about, does that essence need to be changed a little bit? Do your expectations need to be adjusted a little bit? I just want to let you think about that for a little minute. What does confidence look like for you? I think to grow a business, to start a business, to develop it, there's an element that I think you have to outsmart your biological programming. You have to challenge your own kind of innate behaviors, if you like. You have to challenge your biological programming. So remember that ultimately you want to stay safe, you want to stay comfortable, you want to stay familiar, and you have to actively reach outside of your comfort zone. And this is where, growth and innovation and creativity and surprise all live. And it's likely that for all of you who are probably at lots of different stages, you can't even comprehend this right now, but know that there's potential out there that maybe you haven't even seen yet. Second thing I wanted to highlight is that it always starts small. So confidence begins like a little seed. It starts with a small element of belief in your idea. So if there's something in your mind, something that needs a little bit of attention, something that needs a little bit more planning or work, take a little bit of time to dedicate to it and to grow your idea. Confidence will grow alongside it as you become kind of clearer on all of the elements, but it can be just a little fragment. Think about it like it will grow alongside in equal measure. And it might take a long time to get to where you feel completely happy with it, but it's always moving, it's always gathering momentum and building. Third thing I wanted to highlight about confidence is it needs to be nurtured. It's not something that you can just take for granted and then leave at the side. Don't expect it to just appear quickly. Expect it to grow over time. Expect it to be uncovered within yourself, like we talked about last week. You have more confidence than you believe. It's just that your belief doesn't align with that confidence right now. Confidence kind of grows when you build solid foundations. So this really means coming back to your idea, your plan of action, your strategy, and it means spending time to strengthen it over and over and over again. And for me, this means taking scheduled time out to think about how confidence is impacting yourself and your business. So I'd recommend maybe once a week, maybe at the end of the week is a good kind of reflection period, whether that's a Friday or the weekend or however your week looks. But at the end of that week, pick a little, might be 10, 15 minutes and reflect on how confident you felt that week and how this is impacting your business. What you're looking for is patterns. It could be, I've said no to that opportunity again. I've said no again, and it could be a repeating pattern that you don't feel ready for yet. Next thing I wanted to highlight about confidence is it needs to be challenged. So confidence builds when you're brave enough to challenge yourself. So this is not an easy one, but I would recommend a check-in with yourself from time to time. So gut instinct has a role to play here. So, for example, have you turned down an opportunity because you didn't feel ready? Have you stayed in your comfort zone too long because you're afraid to take that next step? Have you held yourself back from growth because it means, nothing will change if I keep it as it is right now? And again, please know that that's normal, but you need to be aware enough to see what's going on and then decide if you want to do something with it. And then again, don't beat yourself up. You take the lesson and say, I see what happened there. I'm going to choose something different next time. We're so hard on ourselves. The critical voice can take over. I can't believe I said no. I'm not brave enough. I'm not strong enough. I'll never be able to do it as good as they can. All of that chatter that happens. So I really want you to think about, what am I choosing for myself and my business? Am I happy with that? Because you might be. And if you're not happy with that, then just choose something differently next time. And it takes practice, but the main thing from that is know that you need to challenge yourself, because it could be that no one around you will challenge you. Maybe they think that, you're absolutely happy with how things are. The next point is, and I really, really love this one, is it's an energy source. Imagine you start thinking about confidence as this renewable super source, I've put it here. So once it's discovered, it grows, develops, and multiplies, fueling your development. So if you could try and keep it in your mind that your confidence is like this natural energy source, something that you can tap into, something that is inside of each of you, and maybe you just haven't connected to it in a while. Maybe you don't know it's there. But I promise you there's something in there that is yet to be discovered. So I want you to at least consider this idea that this whole, reservoir of confidence lies within. It's just you haven't got the tools yet to be able to tap into that. Next point I wanted to highlight is confidence is how you build resilience. So confidence will help you to overcome setbacks. It will help you to handle criticism and rejection. So the way I kind of see this is confidence and resilience work together. When you take action despite the fear, when you face a difficult choice or situation, it's you choosing to move forward rather than letting that kind of biological urge to hide or retreat take over, which is normal again, by the way. But they work hand in hand. So confidence will strengthen your resilience, and then becoming more resilient will positively impact your confidence. So it's a really positive relationship between the two. But you need to remain aware so that the next time something happens, maybe it's a negative comment on social media, maybe a financial pressure, maybe it's an unexpected challenge that comes up. Remember to hold this idea of tapping into your confidence as a means of helping you find the answer, knowing that, doing that alone will help build your resilience in the long term. And I wanted to take a little bit of time here on this slide to say, I wish people knew really what they were capable of. This is something I see time and time again. So you are more powerful than you realize. So I want you to just, let that sink in for a little minute. I want you to tell yourself, what if this is my time? What if this little gut feeling or this little seed of an idea or this thing that I can shake needs to be taken forward? So it's time maybe to tap into this natural power source that you all have. If you're more powerful than you realize, if you are more energetic than you know, more resourceful than you give yourself credit for, you're capable of so much more than you realize. Now, what if you really believed it? And again, take a few seconds to really let that sink in. What if you really, really believed it? What would happen? What would happen really is nothing could stop you because you would be on this kind of forward momentum roller coaster. You would be flexible, adaptable, resilient, and ultimately it doesn't matter what gets in the way because you can find an alternative route. So think about this like a sat nav. So you put the destination in, you don't necessarily know what's going to come up. There's going to be roadblocks or things that happen along the way, but the sat nav will reroute automatically. You know the final destination. You've got that sorted. You've got the vision. So what if you really believed, you put that into the sat nav and you know where you're going. You just don't know how you're going to get there. But you have belief in yourself and you know that nothing really can stop you. That's the superpower that confidence can give you. So it's like resilience blown up. It's like having a real sense of certainty that you can handle anything that comes. And that's a really, really lovely feeling. So try and cultivate that, nurture it a little bit. Think about what that would feel like for you if you really believed it. So, what I want to spend a little bit of time on next is overcoming this fear of failure because this comes up a lot. And again, we talked about it a little bit last week, but I wanted to give you 5 strategies to help overcome this fear of failure. So the first one is a really broad topic, so I'm giving you just a little snippet here, but hopefully this will make sense. So get to know the principles of your own mind. So the first thing here is you are hardwired for safety above everything else. This is all of our biological programming. This is knowing that you are survival programmed essentially. And knowing this reminds you not to be too hard on yourself because if your brain is kind of, it's like a detector that it's 24/7, it's looking out for danger all of the time, then you're going to be programmed to stay in a safe place more than you're programmed for growth, for example. Second thing is your brain acts as a prediction machine. So it's always trying to work out naturally, without your conscious effort, what's coming up next. In some cases, and especially, when we're talking about growing business and developing and all of this, it can lead to anxiety and overthinking. So the thing to really understand with this is you have to know if it's healthy or not, and only you will know the answer to this. Obviously, if your brain is kind of working in this prediction motion all of the time, it can be really useful. You're figuring out what may happen, you're problem solving, that's all really great. But you have to know the line of when is this helping me and when is it not? When is this natural kind of instinct holding me back? Next thing is you have a natural negative bias that shapes your behavior. So again, this is survival related. So knowing this can mean that you're able to identify when you're fearing the worst because your brain is searching for all of the possible negative outcomes. Again, it's part of this kind of scanning for danger scenario. So if you're always scanning for danger and you know that you have the negative bias, you can kind of catch yourself and say, I see what's happening here. I can override this natural behavior. I'm going to choose to take the harder route. I'm going to choose the expansion. I'm going to take on that extra member of staff, whatever that might be for you. Another thing to know about your mind that's really relevant here is you are drawn to the familiar and the certainty. You know, as human beings, we're all drawn to this idea of what we know, what's familiar. It's where we feel comfortable, not uncertainty. All of us, in general terms, don't like uncertainty. So again, it's normal, and you have to kind of actively push past that and take action despite the feeling. So some people ask me, how can I tell the difference between my gut instinct and these kind of nerves or anxiety? And it's kind of like, think about it like when you're overthinking or you're procrastinating or you're anxious. The way I feel like it's best to describe it is the thoughts feel really loud and sometimes intrusive. You'll never succeed. Why are you trying to do that? She's better than you. He has done that better. Whatever your thoughts are. But the little kind of quieter voice is your gut instinct. That's how I kind of see it for me anyway. That the little quieter voice is saying, come on, you can do this. And it's trying to practice tuning in to that gut instinct and kind of tuning out the louder stimulation. So hopefully that helps. Also, when we're talking about the brain, you have to stimulate your reward centers. So you do this by doing tasks that require effort, things that are hard. This naturally kind of stimulates dopamine and the reward systems in the brain. So when you do this kind of stuff, you're like, oh, I was able to do that easier than I thought. One for me, way back when I was starting out, was developing a website. Like, I'm not a tech person. It's not something I necessarily enjoy, but I did it and I was able to do it and it was all fine. So I was like, oh, maybe I am better at these things than I think. So again, this kind of works best when you work your way through avoidance. Your mind is kind of trying to pull you in a different direction and you do it anyway. So the second point on here is to adjust your mindset. So reframe how you see failure. So if you kind of change how you think about failure, and again, I would encourage all of you to, ask yourself, what does failure look like for me? So that might be hosting an event and no one shows up. It might be putting yourself out there on social media, whatever that looks like for you. But then switch how you think about it, change your perspective. And if you reframe it as a learning opportunity, it can feel a little bit different. So if you see it as a stepping stone rather than a setback, it reduces that emotional burden that you've attached to it. And it helps you kind of to stay motivated and driven and, in pursuit of your own goals. There is no such thing as failure. There's only growth. And I know that can sometimes feel like a little bit cliche, but when you really start to believe that, then it really does change it. I'll give you an example where this really worked for me was I did a yoga session in one of the big parks in Glasgow last summer or the summer before. And the first one I did, no one showed up. And I was like, okay, how do I reframe this? So I could just hide and never do it again, or I could just maybe do a little bit more work on the marketing, because if no one's showing up, it means I've got the message wrong. If I believe in the product and I believe that it was going to be a good event, then it means that I'm not communicating this clearly. So I took it as a learning opportunity, changed a few things around, did it again, and was brave enough to get over that. Oh my God, but what if no one shows up? And it turned out absolutely fine. Just a little example of how you can use that in real life. So the third point here is to set realistic goals and break them down a little bit. So breaking down larger goals into smaller, manageable tasks. It makes the whole process less overwhelming and allows you also to build confidence over time. So are you celebrating your little small wins? Again, it's really common to be quite hard on yourself. So can you keep yourself motivated, focused by really celebrating yourself? And, if you want to think about how to do that right now, think of something that's gone really great for you over the last month. And that could be something as simple as I was brave enough to do a post that I'd been putting off. I was brave enough to join LinkedIn or, invite someone to my store or, whatever that is. You will find something. It's just that you're not used to looking for it. Number 4 here is to focus on what you can control. So some of you might be familiar with the circle of control, which basically means that you focus in on the core. What you can control is always yourself, your actions, your behavior, your responses. So when you think about that from a business perspective, what can you control in your business or your idea or, the direction that you're going? If you choose to focus on what you can control, it helps reduce your anxiety about the unknown, which we're all a little bit afraid of naturally. So you concentrate your actions on what you can control and you make steady progress without being kind of, paralyzed by this fear of external factors. Because, if you're looking at social media is such a common one and there's so many people doing so many amazing things, but if you compare yourself to them too much, it can be really overwhelming. Something I heard recently on this idea of comparison was, is it teaching you something or is it torturing you? So if you're looking at someone who does a similar thing and maybe you feel quite inspired and motivated by their success, and you think, okay, this comparison is helpful. But if it leads you to feeling, a little bit down on yourself or you're beating yourself up, you have to ask yourself, is this teaching me something or torturing me? And if it's torturing me, then there's a different strategy to be played, but you have to know that first. And lastly, on this one is to seek support and mentorship. We seen last week on the lovely chat and everybody was connecting and talking. Having a support system of mentors, of peers, of advisors can be really, really invaluable. Everybody needs guidance, encouragement, a little bit of reassurance from time to time. And obviously we have Business Gateway and all the staff there ready to help. Please never be afraid to reach out and ask for help if you need it. Also, something that we kind of forget is learn from others who have faced similar challenges. So don't be afraid to reach out to someone in your field and ask for a little bit of help, because a lot of the time small businesses are working in small teams. It can be really lovely to try and grow your network and feel brave enough to do that. I wanted to remind you all from, following on the lovely chat that we had last week, we're not in this alone. There's a whole, network of people out there, all who have similar goals and want to grow and develop. So please allow yourself to remember that you're part of something bigger, even when you can't see it. So try and urge yourself to get out there and seek a little bit more support. So moving on to the practical tools. So I want to talk about using your mind and body to help you along this process. So the first thing is to help you regulate your nervous system. So if you can regulate your nervous system, you can take the steps forward that you'd like to, because your biology is not running the show. So this means bringing deliberate attention to how you're feeling and the reactions that are happening internally all of the time. It's kind of like, when at home, when you have that kind of thermostat that is constantly reading the temperature, think about that as you're constantly kind of monitoring what is going on inside. So your nervous system reactions, your anxiety levels, your thoughts, your feelings, and also what that means for you on a daily basis. The second thing is obviously understanding how your mind works so that you have the knowledge to step forward, even when everything in your brain is telling you not to. So it means that you can access the potential that you have to be more creative, to be more spontaneous, to let go a little bit more, and to have the clarity of mind to make the difficult decisions when you have to. So let's get a little bit more specific on this practical side. So the first things is affirmations. So these always are a bit of a anomaly because some people love affirmations, some people don't understand it. So from a scientific point of view, self-affirmation theory states that kind of positive messages that we say to ourselves during stressful times, emotional times, can help to protect us and motivate us forward. So remember that we talked about last week how powerful your subconscious brain is. So scientists basically think that it's around 90 to 95% of all of your behavior is programmed from your subconscious mind. So when you engage in affirmations, you are essentially reprogramming your subconscious. And it takes a little bit of time. And I know it can be a little bit hard to get your head around because you're thinking about it logically. This doesn't make sense. This can't work. Is this real? But actually, the science backs it up. So we can see in brain imaging studies that self-affirmations lead to an increase in brain activity in the reward regions. So a little bit more specifically, we see increases in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which alongside the reward systems play a really important response in the role against stress and anxiety. And we know that looking at these brain imaging, it means that there's changes in brain activity that can predict future behavior changes. So in short, there is science to back this up. This is not all, fluffy, just with no backup behind it. Talking about affirmations, I want you just to remind yourself of everything that you've achieved up until now in your life. This is something that we don't talk about enough. I want you to think about the positive things that you have done, things that you have overcame, and grow these positive thoughts. And this is doing affirmations in a really organic nature. I want you to think about, these ideas that you have about yourself getting bigger and bigger, and keep these affirmations personal to you. You'll see quite a lot of things online, and obviously you can Google affirmations and there'll be hundreds of thousands, but I think it's always best if you write them yourself. You have a tendency, again, from a scientific perspective, to believe yourself and what you say more than other people. So start where you're at right now, even if you're skeptical, and just keep changing them up. Don't stick to the same ones for a long period of time. I would probably say, stick to your own personal ones that you designed for maybe 2 weeks. See how it feels. You might want to stick with them a little bit longer, but the minute that you start to think, oh yeah, that's resonating, I think I believe that a little bit more, don't be afraid to change them up. Self-development is something I wanted to talk about because I believe this goes hand in hand with any kind of business idea that you're developing or growing. So don't be afraid to work on both at the same time. Sometimes what I have seen is, all the effort goes into the business, which is obviously great, but think about a little bit of effort into yourself. What do you believe? Get to know yourself on a deeper level. Do it with real purpose and intention, and watch your own patterns of behavior. Watch your repetitive thoughts. Watch your feelings and how you react to situations, because of course your personal and your business are very, very closely interlinked. Ultimately, everything that you do personally from a development point of view will benefit your business. So please try to keep that in mind as well. So wild imagination, I love this one because it feels kind of childlike. So what if you were to let it run a little bit wild and a little bit free and without limits? What would that look like? What can you create? I feel like sometimes as adults, we all get, very serious and we're very logical, and, we have this kind of idea of success that has sometimes been morphed and changed, and sometimes in a good way, of course. but a lot of that is personal experience of what you've achieved up until now. So what would your younger self say? Would there be a little bit more fun or ambition in there? Don't let the logical side take over and dampen the creativity, which we're going to come back to in a little second anyway. But, just invite yourself to think, what would your younger self say? What would you achieve if you allowed yourself to dream? Sometimes I feel like dreams are limited by what you know and also by what you think you can achieve. But what if what you could achieve is so much higher than your imagination will let you run? Because you don't want to get, too big for your boots, or you don't know what that glass ceiling is. But what if it's, 10 levels above what you can imagine? And it's really a lovely idea to, just kind of unleash your imagination and see what could happen. Could you create something that is local right now that then could go, all over the country? Have you ever thought about going bigger, bolder, wilder? Now, coming back to affirmations, I wanted to give you some examples just for anyone who's not familiar with this. So, a little experiment, some new confidence affirmations. The thing about affirmations as well is to release any pressure and say to yourself, so you've got some examples here, such as, I'm going to acknowledge any fears I have and set aside the ones which are not helpful so that I can move towards what I want to do next. Something like that. If you're just starting out and the fear is crippling right now, then, if you tell yourself that as often as you can remember, or you put it on a little post-it next to your desk and maybe glance at it a few times a day, all these little things really, really count. Things like, I deserve to have great success. I like who I am. I like who I am becoming as I move towards this new phase. So if you kind of notice, there's always forward projection and forward momentum involved. I'm so proud of myself for taking action on this. I owe it to myself to try. I was born with natural confidence in myself. I'm restoring that every day. That's a really lovely one. If you don't feel naturally confident, I was born with natural confidence. I'm restoring that every day. So think about confidence as this kind of gift, this resource that is unraveling with time. So that idea that we talked about of discovering what's already there. So just use these as a little bit of inspiration, but again, I would encourage you to write your own. So I want to talk to you a little bit about creativity because this is such a good practical tool to boost your confidence. So when was the last time you were truly creative? Now, I mean, getting out a big sheet of paper, drawing something, brainstorming, scribbling, post-it notes on walls, vision boards, and it could be as simple as just colors, mood boards, mind maps, whatever works for you. But keep in mind that idea of letting your imagination really run free. Get creative. Sometimes it's not easy, again, for us as adults to feel creative. It's lost amongst the logical world and, how busy we are in life and all of that. And it's likely that you all have a never-ending to-do list because that's the world that we live in. So creativity can feel a little bit like a luxury that we can't afford. But the truth is, when you're trying to develop something, grow something, you need to progress in a clear direction, and that has to involve your creative side. It has to involve it a lot, not just a little. So think about it, you might be given a little 5 to 8%, let's say, of your creative side to your business. Open that up, give it a lot more. Again, if you think about this as a natural resource that you already have anyway, we all have it within ourselves. So maybe it's just been lost a little bit along the way. So believing that you have this power of creativity allows you a little bit of a boost of confidence to say, why am I not letting this out? If you're time constrained and you're thinking, this all sounds great, but how do I actually make this work? Think about allocating a little creative slot. So that might be, whatever you can manage, 10, 15 minutes, half an hour, think about it like a little free time to just, let the little inner child in and see what happens. There's a good book recommendation for this, The Artist's Way. I think someone might have mentioned it last week, but it's a really good book to get the kind of creative juices flowing for this process that you can naturally jump into, probably again more than you think. So more practical tools from a more of a mindfulness perspective, breath work being the first one. So breathwork is a really powerful tool for building confidence because it's useful for people who are prone to self-doubt, anxiety, stress, overthinking, procrastination, all of that, because it can regulate the nervous system so quickly. So it kind of works by engaging in intentional, conscious breathing techniques such as diaphragmatic breathing or box breathing, which some of you might be familiar with. Basically, what you're doing is you're regulating your nervous system and you're using your body in a way to tell your mind to calm a little bit. So it reduces cortisol and the stress hormone and basically can make you feel a little bit calmer. So think about it like you're shifting from a stress response on the go situation to a more relaxed but alert state. So clearer thinking, better projection of your ideas, a stronger kind of presence of mind, and probably generally more clarity on where you're going. It also really impacts your mind body awareness, so helping you to reconnect with yourself on a deeper level. You stay connected, you can communicate better, and generally, I feel like you probably would have a little bit more authentic confidence because you're reconnecting to yourself. I'd be interested for you to tell each other, have you tried breath work and do you feel like you kind of understand how this could have an impact on your business? Second one is meditation, which is linked, of course, to breath work, same kind of mindfulness idea. But with meditation, I always think of it as brain training. So it's a form of practice that increases your self-awareness and over time will build emotional strength and resilience. So again, developing this kind of strong sense of calm in the storm, it allows you to kind of navigate any challenges with clarity, a clear mind, a kind of, not a unrealistic Zen-like state, but a clarity of mind that's not possible when you're in that kind of stress response system. So think about it like it's quieting also your inner critic, replacing self-doubt with probably a more balanced and empowered mindset. Again, encouraging this kind of, real presence in conversations and helping you make decisions from a balanced place. So again, I'd be curious, do any of you practice this regularly? Does this make sense? For anybody who doesn't, maybe this would be helpful for you, you guys to tell the others, the benefits that you can actually get practically from tools like this. I think what happens is, and this certainly happened for me, is over time these practices build a foundation of kind of trust in yourself, which we talked about last week. It's easier to take risks. It's easier to embrace opportunities. It's easier to step into roles that maybe would have scared you in the past because it's linked to your own sense of yourself and your confidence. So time travel, some of you might be looking at this going, what is she talking about? But I call it this because it's a form of visualization and time travel sounds kind of fun. So this is a really powerful tool for building confidence by allowing you to mentally step forward into the future and allow yourself to imagine what is possible. So this works by kind of, very vividly down to the tiniest detail that you can imagine. Imagine yourself succeeding, whether it's a strong presentation or, your performance in an interview, or you're negotiating a price with a supplier, or leading a team of people, or appearing on TV, or whatever that is. It creates a little bit of a mental blueprint for success. Again, this is kind of backed up by science. When you think about professional footballers, for example, and Olympic athletes and that kind of thing, they all use visualization to do a little bit of this kind of mental preparation for what will come. James Clear also talks a lot about this in the book Atomic Habits, which I would also recommend if anyone is interested in this. But think about it like it strengthens the belief in your abilities, but also makes the fear of failure less, makes it less prominent. So it works kind of because the brain will respond to the visual experiences as if it's real, because your subconscious can't tell the difference between what's real and imagined a lot of the time. So it's reinforcing positive self-perception and motivation. So think about this time travel like gaining clarity, stepping into opportunities that you would like to happen with purpose and intention. So again, just, spending 5-10 minutes a week, if that's all that you can manage, then absolutely great. But I always try and imagine a year ahead. So every time I do it, I think, where am I going to be next year? What would I like to happen? Where would I like to be? Who would I like to be with? What am I doing? What am I succeeding? What am I growing? And, let it take a little bit of a life of its own. Now, something again that's a whole workshop on its own, but I wanted to put it in here because as women generally, we are not always good at this. So self-compassion. So there's an expert on this field called Dr. Kirsten Neff, who is the kind of go-to expert in this. If this is something that you feel you need a little bit of work with, I would recommend you check out some of her books. Basically, the gist is treat yourself with kindness instead of criticism. So the critical voice is there, it's prominent, it's strong. But when you're able to be compassionate to yourself, it's a really strong foundation for confidence, because, you might have high expectations of yourself. You might have some self-doubt, imposter syndrome. You might have the fear of failure. But by treating yourself with kindness rather than criticism, you build this kind of sense of inner resilience and develop a growth mindset. So when challenges come up, again, self-compassion allows you to view setbacks as learning opportunities rather than failures. It also kind of encourages a sense of worthiness, so helping you trust yourself, your own abilities, and not be kind of paralyzed by this idea that everything has to be perfect, which again, I come up against all the time with amazing, incredible women just trying to get everything perfect, but holding themselves back in the process. So think about self-compassion, strengthening confidence by creating a kind of supportive inner dialogue, like you're your own best friend. Makes it easier to kind of embrace where you're at and to navigate also where you're going. So a really powerful quote that I've always remembered on this topic was from Louise Hay. So some of you may know her. She's a kind of inspirational speaker, but she said, "You've been criticizing yourself for years. Try approving of yourself and see what happens." And I thought that's so lovely, because it kind of gives you this, oh, if I did approve of myself, what would happen? How would that change things for me? The process of building confidence takes courage and commitment. But if you remember only one thing, it can be your secret weapon. It can lift you up, time and time again when obstacles get in the way, which they will, because that's the world that we live in. But when you're growing your confidence, you are naturally unstoppable because you are flexible, you're adaptable, you can handle anything. And in that case, you really have nothing to be afraid of because you believe so strongly in yourself. I hope that helps. Oh, thank you. You guys are helping each other out, I see, with questions. So before we go, I want to ask you to just get a little bit of a gauge. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident do you feel that you can take positive steps forward? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most confident, 1 being not so much. It's so lovely. Oh, amazing. They're all quite high. Brilliant. And there's space, there's space for everybody. There's a few 10s in here. I'm loving the confidence. Wow. And, even when there's space to grow, see that as a potential. You see that space and you say, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I sure as hell am getting the process moving. I'm finding the momentum. Karen, always growing. Absolutely. Oh, Lindsay, I love that. I was a 4 last week. I'm an 8 this week. I love it. So we have a wee bit of time. First of all, just thank you from myself and Business Gateway for again taking the time out to be here. I know your time is precious, so I always really appreciate all of you showing up. So thank you for that. If you have some questions, Sally, do you have a note of anything? We can go from there.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. I think some of my kind of takeaways that I wrote down just now was kind of about the building networks and about how to connect with people. And I put down, how do you find your own tribe? I don't know if you've got any kind of
I
any
think
thoughts about that.
I think we were talking about comparison. I think when you see people who are doing something similar to what you're doing, I think don't be afraid to reach out. A lot of women, will be happy to support each other because we have this kind of, this idea that we're sometimes up against each other. And I don't think that's always the case. I think, you might be surprised to reach out, ask for a little bit of advice from someone in the industry and build your little circle from there. It can be 2 people, 3 people, it might be 30 people. But also don't be afraid to start something yourself and say, I'm in this local area, don't be afraid to put posts on social to say, let's meet up. And if it's just you, then that's time to brainstorm anyway. I think again this idea that we hold ourselves back so much for self-protection, but sometimes that can lead to just keeping yourself isolated. Oh, you're on mute, Sally.
Finding your own
There
tribe.
we
I
go.
actually heard that at another session, and I really loved that because it's like, we all have different interests, and it's really finding people you kind of make that deep connection with and want
Yeah,
to sort of keep in touch with as well.
yeah.
So I kind of loved that phrase. Somebody else asked about how can we change perception. This is quite a big question for 2 minutes to go, but
I'll give it a
how
go.
can we change perception from other people? Society is not prepared for confident women. And I thought,
Mm.
well, that is a big question of how we change society for two
Oh
minutes
God,
to
I
go.
know. I guess you have to be confident in what your offer is. Not everyone is going to get it. And I suppose you have to just be okay that, if you feel that you're on the right path, that confidence is really, believing in yourself that your tribe will find you, the people that you're trying to attract will find you. It's just being brave enough to, I guess, put it out there and be okay also that it's not going to be for everyone. So I think almost there's an element, I think someone mentioned it in last week's call about the let them theory from Mel Robbins, which is all about this kind of topic of, let them say whatever they want. And sometimes it's hard because it's family members, it's friends. They're like, oh, really? Do you think, that's a great idea? But do you really believe in it? That's the heart of it.
And somebody had said that, how do you kind of change that perception when maybe your family don't even, and you just touched on that, don't,
Yeah,
believe in you.
just, yeah,
And I
because,
think you've given us some lots of tips today as well, around help around that. So
yeah, because I think, Sally, just saying, I appreciate your opinion, but, I believe in this. That's it. And you just kind of what I try to do mentally, because I'm quite a strong believer in visualization. I try to put little things in a little box and then I just leave them there and say, well, that's not really helpful. So I'm going to put it in the little box and then I'm cool with it. It's there and I'm not ignoring it, but I've just placed it in a little part that, it's fine because I've got all this stuff to focus on over here.
I think we're at 1 o'clock now, and I've had a few people saying, how do I connect with Nic? Is the best way to connect with you and see what else you're doing? Is it through your website or through LinkedIn? What's the best
Yeah,
way for
either
people to connect
LinkedIn,
with you?
website, email. I think, do I have it on the screen? I do. So you could take a little photo of that, drop me an email. follow me on Instagram, send me any little messages or questions that we've missed. Actually, a few people did this last week. Send me little questions afterwards that we didn't have time to answer. So yes, quite happy to help anyone who needs a little bit of support.
That's great. Okay, well, we're 1 minute past now, so I guess we should wrap up. I'm sure there's probably some more questions, but that's super that you've made that offer for people
Yeah,
to
of course.
connect and kind of follow up. And I can see there's still lots of people connecting. Somebody about last week's session. I can put that link again just now
Oh
for
yeah,
the
perfect.
video that we had. The link that I'm putting is the Business Gateway website, YouTube page, I should say. And that YouTube page has all our videos, including the one for last week for these kind of sessions that we do. But you'll be getting a follow-up email from us and it'll have links to today. And I've given you that link for last week as well. So if you missed it, have a look on our Business Gateway YouTube channel. And just finally, that was brilliant. Again, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. So
Yeah,
thanks, everybody.
absolutely. Thank you
Okay.
everyone so much.